Hi again, Panther fans, and welcome to the Panther Insider Podcast driven by Ford. Great to be back. This is Dave Cohen, the radio voice of the Panthers. On this latest show, we're joined by Georgia State's Director of Athletics, Charlie Cobb, as we talk about the state of college athletics, the current issues facing college athletic departments, such as name, image, likeness, and the recent $2.8 billion court ruling involving retro payments to student athletes. Where is college athletics headed? Of course, we'll also get an update on Georgia State athletics and touch on college football as the Panthers head in to their second season under head coach Del McGee. Again, a reminder, if you've missed any of our previous podcasts, they're all available on the Apple Archives page. You can access that online at georgiastatesports.com. Again, on the latest Panther Insider Podcast, we're talking Georgia State athletics with Athletics Director Charlie Cobb. It's been a while. Great to have you back here on the Panther Insider Podcast at the Georgia State Radio Network microphones. Interesting times here. There's a lot to cover with regards not just to Georgia State athletics, Charlie, but what's going on in college athletics, and it is changing rapidly.
Dave, it's great to be back with you again. You've been busy. I've listened to the podcast, and you've had a number of people promoting Georgia State, so good to make it into your calendar, and we'll talk a little bit about what this changing, evolving world looks like because it is it's changing, and there's still a lot, candidly, left to change as well. So.
Well, let me start out real quick with Georgia State football because fall camp will open up that first week in August, and here we go. You know, I can still remember, and I know you don't like to look back, but I can remember Dr. Becker at the time pressing that button for 800 days until the first game ever, which was September 2 of 2010, and here we are 16 years later. It's been a great ride for the most part, and the program has grown a lot. And hopefully a lot more great football to come at Georgia State. But we're going to have the second season under head coach Del McGee coming up. We open up at Ole Miss.
David took all of 15 seconds for you to give me a history lesson, so that may be a record for you. But, it's exciting to get into July and then ultimately into August and get ready to start the season. We got a lot to be excited about, and certainly the beauty of playing football games, it's what we're about, and really excited about the opportunity to see where this program can go and, what it means to our campus and what it means to our community.
All right, so when we talk college athletics, college football is driving the bus. And since the last time you'd appeared on this podcast, a lot has changed. A lot of it to do with the $2.8 billion back payment to former student athletes. There has been changes within conference realignment, which we'll talk about as we progress. But just an overall synopsis of where we are, Georgia State, within the overall picture of what's going on in college athletics and how you guys are navigating that.
Yeah, it's certainly with our Sun Belt peers, a lot of conversation, a lot of consternation, a lot of excitement. Mixed emotions, candidly, in what's going on. The House settlement has been a big piece of conversation nationally for the last several years, and so to get some resolution to that, I think it gives us clarity as to the direction that we're going. One of the constant refrains we get when we're talking to people, especially donors, about the process. It's the idea or notion that pay for play for kids is a big question. Some don't like it, some are ambivalent, and some really passionate about it. But it's the reality of it is it's fair for the kids. It's where the world is today, and if we want to operate in this new environment, then certainly we have to adjust and adapt to what's going on. And that's what we spent the better part of the last several years preparing for the moment of the House. The Judge Wilkin allowing the settlement to go through, and then what that manifests itself into being.
I'll ask you a personal question. You played at North Carolina State. Did you ever think you'd see the day that we'd be in the situation that we're in from the standpoint of paying college athletes? It's almost like there's no guardrails on either side of the road. You got some players making big money. You got players who leave schools to go into the portal thinking that they're going to get big money. Did you think you'd ever see it where it is right now?
Yeah, I'm not sure we ever, when you were in school, you ever looked at the idea or thought of being paid. I certainly think that we all looked and said, hey, we'd like to get something from it for what we were creating, and I have no thoughts or ideas that the kids don't deserve something in this environment. I think the challenge gets into the place of how big those dollars are for the very special. Certainly, it kind of skews the line of what is college athletics and what is professional sports. But it's certainly manifested itself in that every coach, every kid is looking for more resources. They're looking for compensation in some level, and you gotta draw a line and say, hey, look, this is what we have. I think sometimes people forget that we have a fiduciary responsibility. We can spend what we make, we can spend what we have, but it's irresponsible to get out beyond what we have the ability to pay. And so, while there's a big focus on revenue creation, there's also a very big focus and a light focus on managing expenses, no different than anybody does in their own personal life. And so it's been a constant. I don't think anybody is excited, fully. I don't think anybody's upset fully as well. So there's a lot of unknowns, but there's been a lot of give and take. It's a lot of conversations, and certainly the challenge for everybody is that the expectation among kids and whether you're in the portal or whether you're a high school kid, there's a lot of expectation on compensation for likeness, and the NLI piece becomes the mechanism in which it's justified. But kids have gotten beyond just being compensated in terms of cost of attendance, being compensated for the Austin Award, which was a new $6,000 grant that kids could get a couple years ago, and then those that are on Pell Grants, it's what am I being, what can I earn if I come to your school? The days of I want to develop, I want to study, I want to become a student athlete, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want all those intrinsic things from college sports. For a lot of kids, it's a secondary question, and that's unfortunate, I think, for a lot of us that have been fortunate to do this for a while.
The $2.8 billion court ruling, how does that affect Georgia State University athletics? In other words, how will we handle that, and how will we feel it?
Yeah, I think first let me give you a little bit of background on the House settlement. It's a class action lawsuit. It's a 10-year settlement. Really, it's the Power 4 schools in Notre Dame. They're named as defendants in the agreement. And but we all as NCAA members or certainly as Division I members, we have the ability to opt in, which anybody's a FBS school is going to opt in and play. The $2.8 billion settlement to past former athletes, we've had to manage a process where kids can register to be part of the class action suit, and that was something that was mandated as part of the negotiations. Eric Paz and Zach Gale on our compliance staff have done an incredible job of trying to make that work and be as simple as possible for kids, former student athletes, to register. The bulk of the money is going to go on an annual basis is actually going to go back to former football players at the Division I level. And again, there's a tiering that's involved based on marketing rights and television exposure. And so what those final numbers look like, we aren't privy to that. But 75% of the available funds for the settlement will go to football players, 15% go to men's basketball players, 5% go to women's basketball players, and then 5% go to other student athletes. So for kids that played at Georgia State, I don't think that it's going to be a financial windfall by any stretch of the imagination. I think if you played at some of the Power 4 schools and you were a pretty known player, there's an incredible opportunity for you to earn some income over the next 10 years. Not unfamiliar with back in the day when they did the restricted earnings settlement with coaches. So there's an opportunity there. Probably the first piece of this that's really been kind of an eye-opener and frustrating for me, because I've tried for several years to get people to acknowledge this up front. But, the $2.8 billion, roughly $500 to $700 million of this is going to the plaintiff attorneys. And so this whole thing started really with some attorneys that felt like there was an opportunity to make some money, and they did, and they were successful to do it. But I think it's a little bit disingenuous for people to say that this was fully, trying to compensate kids for marketing rights that maybe they didn't have access to, when you're going to take, $500 to $700 million for your work. And clearly, In the last probably 2 or 3 weeks, there's been some national exposure about the amount that the plaintiff attorneys have received. But it's something that I frankly think that, and I argued with the NCAA attorney, several times when I was on the D1 council about that should be something that was part of the discussion, in a very public setting, because I think it's excessive by any stretch of the imagination. But those that are in that world as plaintiff attorneys, they would argue that it's certainly more than justified, and the judge agreed. So we go with that. I think the second piece about it, then it walks into this idea or notion that we get into revenue sharing, and that's the big piece of the current environment that we're in. The big boys can put the $20 million, and they're all trying to cobble together how they're going to come up with what that number looks like. Mid-major programs like ourselves, we're going to be in the million to the upwards of maybe $5 million range. Again, you're looking at having to go through your budgets and figure out, okay, where can we generate new revenues, but also where we can manage expenses, and what does that look like? And whether it's travel, you hear conversations, stories with teams that say, hey, look, we're going to put money toward revenue share. That's the focus. For every coach. And so you get in a situation where maybe you've chartered planes for your football team to go to games. Well, maybe now we're going to look at 5 or 6 hour bus rides. Maybe we don't need to stay in this hotel, or maybe we don't need this piece of equipment. So you have to be creative in that regard in terms of where your expenses are going to be, and everybody's going to be different. The other opportunity for us, frankly, is from a revenue standpoint, and it gets back to the argument, let's sell more tickets, let's get more people to give to the booster club and give to the university through the foundation. We've had a mechanism in place now for several years through the foundation for people to donate to help us, with direct payments through the licensing rights through the university foundation, and it's a matter of those that have the ability to help us. Certainly taking advantage of it if they didn't want to pay through the collective. And there's financial benefits or tax benefits to give through the foundation. So we've been able to do that, and certainly we're going to try to continue to grow that. But at the end of the day, if it's we need 5-digit numbers, not 1-digit numbers in terms of what people are giving if we're going to really make an impact in that regard and compete. And then we've also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. We've done a number of events here in the stadium through the spring and summer that frankly probably people listening to this wouldn't have any idea. We've done a couple of movie shoots. We've done a concert. We've got a religious service here this weekend. We've got some things coming up that we're trying to maximize the space. And I read conversations about people trying to get creative about revenue. I would argue to say we don't poke our chest out or talk about it a lot, because it's basically things that we're trying to do internal. But we maximize what we have from a facility standpoint, from a revenue standpoint, to help our programs, to help our coaches. And I appreciate what Patrick Hatcher and his staff do in that regard, because it's a lot of nights and weekends in the summer that frankly, whether it's those of us that are working, or even people listening, that they're focused on other things, and these guys are really grinding, trying to be a piece of the puzzle in terms of the revenue creation for us. And then you get into the third piece of this is really the idea or thought of this of roster caps, and it's a bit confusing for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, we've always operated off the idea that you had a scholarship limit based on equivalencies or the numbers on your roster. And now it's pretty simple. Football roster is 105 kids, and if you want to scholarship all 105, you can scholarship all 105. Most people still think there's value in the kids being walk-ons and being part of programs, and so most everybody's going to be in the 85, maybe 90 range across Division I, and kind of see where it goes. But part of the $20 million threshold again is part of the things that we've been part of an issue that we've been competing with is SEC schools, ACC schools, Big Ten schools can offer NIL scholarships to kids. So basically they'll put a package together that's the equivalent of a full scholarship. And so you say, okay, well, how Georgia State's recruiting a kid from South Carolina, and he's going to choose to walk on or be a preferred walk on at a school X. They're not really a walk on in the old fashioned sense of paying their way. They're getting that opportunity paid for via those NIL opportunities. And so this gives a way, an opportunity to kind of level that playing field, but it also, puts stress on the fact of, more scholarship dollars. We've got to be cognizant about how we do it. Fortunately, one of the things that Georgia has and that we need our coaches to take advantage of is the Hope Scholarship. The best kid that we can recruit is a kid that's a great athlete but also qualifies for Hope. It helps us expand the numbers of kids that we can bring, but also it helps us from a budgetary standpoint because there's a significant difference from an in-state kid and an out-of-state kid in terms of scholarship support. So really trying to manage the financial piece of this, the roster piece of it, and then the eligibility piece with all the transfers. We tend to do a lot of evaluations in our academic unit as well as our compliance unit in terms of kids being eligible. Because at the end of the day, fans, hey, we got to get this player. We still got to make sure they qualify to be a college student, and a lot of work. And that work is probably quadrupled in the last 2 years for our staff to do that. But certainly it's it does not go unnoticed in terms of what Eric Paz and Brad Horton and their staffs do to really help us and help our coaches, try to fill competitive rosters. So a lot of balls in the air. Certainly, in the spring and summer when maybe historically things aren't as busy or focused, we put a lot of time, effort, and energy trying to get ready to prepare for what the fall offers.
Charlie and I are back following these words from Ford and Center Park Credit Union as we continue to talk Georgia State University athletics here in the Panther Insider Podcast, driven by Ford.
Wherever you go this fall, greatness starts in a Ford SUV. That's because Ford Escape, Explorer, and the spirited Bronco Sport SUVs have the power, cargo space, and smart tech you need for tailgating on game day, camping under the stars, fall festivals, romantic dinner dates, concerts, antiquing, pumpkin picking, weekend getaways, school plays. For great offers on these versatile SUVs, see your local Ford dealer today. Greatness starts here.
Center Park Credit Union, the official financial sponsor of GSU football, is proud to be a part of the Georgia State community and the Panther athletics program. Center Park provides members convenient financial services. In addition to online banking, mobile banking, and 7 Metro Atlanta branches, Center Park members have access to 5,000 co-op shared branches and 75,000 surcharge-free ATMs nationwide. To find a location near you, visit online at centerpark.org/contact, and that's park with a C. Not a member? Join today at centerpark.org. At Center Park, we help our members flourish.
Ranked alongside MIT and Stanford as one of the most innovative institutions in the country, Georgia State University is leading change in higher education. Few institutions have come so far so fast. We've proven that students from all backgrounds can succeed at the same level. We're changing the way our students are learning, helping them graduate faster, and save millions on the pathway to their degrees. It's no wonder the Washington Post called us a hotbed of growth and innovation. Think you know Georgia State? Think again.
We're back on the Panther Insider Podcast, driven by Ford. We're at our studios here at Center Park Credit Union Stadium in Atlanta. We're going to talk about Georgia State football heading into a new season coming up shortly, but Charlie did a great job kind of giving us an overview of the $2.8 billion court ruling, which is going to affect just about every college athletics program in the United States. What are some things that concern you at this juncture and from a Georgia State standpoint and from a college athletics standpoint as the dust kind of settles on what's going to happen moving forward?
Yeah, Dave, I think one of the things I forgot to mention in the earlier comments was that the annual cost to pay for the settlement from the back payments roughly is about $300,000 per year for the next 10 years in lost NCAA revenues that we would receive. And so we have a number of buckets that we receive money from the NCAA, primarily off the basketball tournament funds, but we've got to adjust. And so as costs rise continually with inflation, it's no different than an individual budget. We've got to adjust to that lost revenue, and it's significant. Hopefully that the conference we can make up for it with our play on the field with the CFP. There's some opportunities in that regard, but we need to be cognizant of that. I think the bigger piece of this puzzle is, okay, what's the next shoot a drop, if you will. Inevitably, there are going to be some additional lawsuits coming from this. Again, I mentioned just the exorbitant fee that the attorneys were able to generate off of this. But there's going to be lawsuits over gender equity. There's going to be lawsuits over eligibility. The reality of it is that what's magical about 4 years to play 5. It's been kind of over our lifetime. It's the quintessential, if you will, college experience. But what's to keep a kid, especially as we get in these economic terms in terms of being able to earn income? What's to say, hey, play 7, 8, 9, 10 years as long as I'm able to do it physically. So there's going to be a challenge to the eligibility piece, and then academically. I'm one who believes that we've got to stay, close to academic. You got to be a college student to play on a team, but there are others that feel that it's maybe not necessary. Or let's take reduced class loads. Why is 12 hours the magic number for a minimum full-time student? Why can't it be 6 or 9? And so there's a number of threats still existing, and certainly we're gonna fight it as an entity. Across college athletics, and then where does it settle, and how long does it settle? So while we have the main threat from a financial standpoint, I think settled for 10 years, we certainly don't have the threats to what being a college student athlete really is about. And it's put a lot of pressure on. I'm excited about what we can do in terms of growing. Really proud of Eli Abbott and our development staff. We've gotten several 8-figure gifts, both actual gifts and pledges over the last 12 months, and it's people who believe in the value of what Georgia State athletics means to them and their families. We're proud of the relationship we have with Center Park, and certainly that significant gift from a naming rights standpoint. When it was done a couple of years ago, it was the 4th best naming rights agreement for a stadium for a college in the U.S., not just in the Southeast or in our league, but in the country. And so significant income that helps us operate comes from that relationship. We're going to try to do the same thing with the Convocation Center. And so, if we can find a naming rights partner that fits the values of Georgia State University and is interested in putting their name on the Convocation Center, then there's certainly another opportunity for us to grow and invest in our program, whether it's investing in our kids or investing in our facilities. It's something that is vitally important to help us, make this opportunity grow. But at the end of the day, I think the challenge for all of us, and everybody wants our teams to be successful. Make no mistake about it. We want to win games and we want to be successful. But if you look at the Sun Belt, it's no secret that those with the most resources, especially with the ability to devote to player retention, player recruitment, player acquisition is the new phrase. Certainly those are the teams that have been most successful. And so that's, a big piece of the focus in terms of where we're at is, how do we help our coaches go recruit the best players? I think it used to be, one of the things that we, specifically in men's basketball and football, when talking with Jonas and Dell, I remember, wow, you got coaches that with great connections in Atlanta from a recruiting standpoint. The coaches will tell you that the relationships are important, but they're nowhere near as important as they used to be because people are out. Hey, look, come here. Here's what we can do from you from a financial standpoint. So we gotta do everything we can collectively as the Georgia State family to help our coaches, kind of compete in this world that involves things beyond just relationships and providing opportunities for kids to grow and so we spend a lot of time, effort, and energy in that world, but we're no different than everybody else. Everybody's focused in that regard. So a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities, and something that you don't have too many wasted moments or wasted days trying to figure out, okay, how do we grow our athletics program.
Obviously, opening the Convocation Center for basketball a couple of years ago was great, big step in the growth from a facility standpoint. This is a kind of a two-part question. An update on the forthcoming college baseball stadium on the site of the former Fulton County Stadium. And then is it a concern for you, which I'm going to guess the answer is at least partially yes. The ability to keep up with everyone else in the Sun Belt Conference, and you kind of alluded to that a little bit in your previous response with regards to voting for things. Is it a concern from a Georgia State standpoint in that so-called keeping up with the Joneses that we're going to be able to do that? And that's, I guess, financial and facilities.
Yeah, it's kind of a two-part edge, right? The baseball project is moving. It's moving along. We certainly hope in the late summer, early fall to be able to kind of do some major announcements with that. But I'll leave it at that as a teaser. But certainly we need an opportunity for our baseball program, candidly even our softball program. We try to compete in track and field, and we're renting Lakewood. So certainly the investment, and from a facility standpoint, we still have some ways to go for some of our sports. But it's also the maintenance of the stadium, and it's we are who we are, and so we have to grow and kind of pick our battles and try to prioritize what is important. I asked a couple of the coaches over the last several months, okay, what's most important, and the answer is all of it, right? And so the investment that people are making, that universities make toward their athletic programs, I think it's not just the athletic director or the football coach or the basketball coach or the baseball coach. I think it starts with everyone, and we certainly don't lack for a lot of passionate people about what we should do. What we've got to figure out is where are those passionate people that have the ability to make game-changing gifts and opportunities for us to grow and be better, and that's the challenge every single day for us. Are we gonna grow to the place where people are gonna give tens of millions of dollars? It's a challenge when we have a pretty young athletic program. I think that's the piece of the puzzle that sometimes people forget. You mentioned 16th season of football is really, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's like 12 or 13 at the FBS level. But it's one of those things that we continue to have to grow with time in terms of the experience that people have had being a part of our program. Basketball convocation center is wonderful. We actually monetize. We actually can create more revenue off basketball now than we ever have, and so that's something that obviously has helped us, grow. And but the goals have changed in terms of let's have a great facility. Well, let's have a great facility, but also we need the ability to go recruit and either through the transfer portal or through high school acquire players, and so it's a different set. And by the way, don't lose sight of the fact that tuition, fees, the cost of being of a scholarship has increased dramatically over the last 10 years. Travel is increasing like crazy, so we've got a lot to balance, just like everyone else. And certainly looking for any help, candidly, whether it comes from the university, whether it comes from philanthropy, whether it comes from corporate support. Just like everybody else that's at our level, it's not one area that's going to help you grow. It's really all three or four of the finite pieces that help fund the budget for an athletic program.
Correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like from a facility standpoint, and I'm just really looking in the Sun Belt, the hot button topic now are those open air, indoor, outdoor football practice facilities.
Yeah, I think it's always important for us if we can get to a place where we have additional spaces to practice. It helps us monetize the stadium more. I mentioned earlier, and really appreciate what Patrick's done. But we've tried to, we have to be careful or cognizant of when our team's out there practicing. And we've done that. Appreciate the cooperation our coaches give us, because at the end of the day it allows us to do those things. But we haven't missed too many practices here because of weather. I think a little bit of that maybe gets overstated. Heck, when 40 years ago it was come here and you can practice indoors and what, why, and how, and every now and then you might need rest mentally or physically from a standpoint. So if we were in a climate that dealt with inclement weather more than we do, we practice in the mornings. It mitigates some of the thunderstorms. So it's something that would be great for us to have, but I'm not sure that it's it would be number one on the priority list. I think there's a few other things that we probably want to do to help our football program grow, and certainly fan support, crowd support. People listening to this, it's the idea of being a fan and being excited about it. But hey, have you bought season tickets? Have you made a commitment to come to the games and be a part of what we're doing? Have you given money to the Panther Athletic Club? Those are the real defining and examples of what we need from people. We've got plenty of opinions and thoughts and ideas, and it's just like recruiting. Everybody thinks guy's a great player. Well, let's get him on campus and figure out if they can actually help us win. Some of the best players that have come through here and other schools have been kids that were a little bit less heralded from a recruiting standpoint. I don't put a lot of stock in the rankings. A little bit of a personal experience. I had a college teammate that was not a very highly rated player, and 4 years later was a 10th pick in the NFL draft and played 15 years in the NFL. So I think there's always exceptions to the rule, and those evaluations, coaches know best in terms of how good players can be, and certainly you have an opportunity to see how motivated a kid is once they get to college and want to be a part of things. But it's the fun part about it, watching kids develop, watching programs develop, and that's been a big piece of what we've tried to be about.
All right, well, Georgia State football is going to open up the season in Oxford, Mississippi against Ole Miss. Then we've got Memphis here at Center Park Stadium for our home opener, followed by Murray State, then a trip up to Nashville for a showdown again with Vanderbilt. But just overall, your thoughts on football, again, as you mentioned, heading into season number 16 and looking to bounce back from, what was a high and low season a year ago.
Yeah, it's a difficult schedule, and I think the coaches, the kids are motivated. We got a lot, like everybody else, we got a number of new faces, and certainly we have the ability to watch workouts over the summer, and so you get a sense of. I think it's a lot of we got a new faces, new leadership. Every team is different, but the work the kids have put in this summer, I think it's one that we should be very excited about. Certainly 2 SEC teams on our schedule is something that is a challenge in front of us. But as we showed last year, we can compete when we come to play, and it's a matter of staying healthy. I think part of the transfer world we're all living in across all sports is that you need your frontline players to stay healthy. Every coach understands that. And we need great crowd support. We're spending a lot of time, and I appreciate the effort from our leadership of our university helping us this spring and summer. We've spent a lot of time trying to create energy and excitement on campus and the partnerships. We really focusing on getting students at the games, and probably unlike any other time, there's always a focus and energy on trying to create something with your students. But I think this is probably the most that the university's been willing to help us in terms of really prioritizing student attendance on game days. And certainly I'm a big believer that if the kids come to the games, then the rest of us come, that the energy gets created by our student population. And so we're trying to really put a lot of effort. We still got about 6-7 weeks, so we've got some time to really kind of let some plans develop. But it's just it's the evolving world. It's competing for the entertainment and the eyeballs in Atlanta, which is always a challenge and one that it's easier to kind of judge from the outside, but actually sit in the middle of it and go, wow, this is interesting. In terms of what really resonates with people, and but we certainly are up for the challenge, and putting a product on the field that people can be excited about, I think is hugely important in terms of and what we're about, because a lot of people you can do a lot of things, but at the end of the day, if you leave happy if you win. I've been fortunate to do this for a while, and winning games and people leaving happy, it's the greatest motivator to get them to come back for a time and time again. So we'll see where it goes.
All right. Any other topics that you want to cover, or we'll save that for another appearance on the Panther Insider podcast?
Yeah, I think part of this whole evolving NCAA world has been an education for a lot of us. I never thought or had the idea that the phrase, have you considered private equity in terms of funding what your athletic programs have been about. It's been interesting to learn that world this spring and summer, and I've told a couple of guys, I said, don't get me wrong, I would love to have $25 million come to us. I said, what I don't really understand is where I'm going to find the 28 or 29 million that I need to pay you back with in terms of our business operation. And so, it's I think it's a vogue phrase that a lot of people are getting into, but it's also, the guys that seem to be talking the most about it nationally are the guys who actually are trying to, provide that funding. They see it as a business opportunity, and at some point, somebody will. It's some of the things that have been interesting is the idea from a marketing standpoint. Okay, where can additional revenue come from? Is it jersey patches? Is it marks on the field? Those kind of things. And so we're trying to explore pretty much every opportunity we can to make big finds from the revenue standpoint, because at the end of the day, $10, $50 is greatly appreciated, and certainly don't ask people to stretch beyond their ability to feel comfortable. But we need 50,000, we need 500,000. Those are the pieces and the focus on what we're about and trying to make it work. And then we looking at this idea. I did a meeting with some guys, attorneys, a couple weeks ago, and it's like, how do we get in a structure of transfer fees for kids? That we tend to be a developmental program, is where we kind of seem to be guiding towards, especially in a couple of sports. But when kids come here and develop, and then the big boys want to come in and say, here's money that frankly we can't compete with a kid to come play. There's got to be some kind of relationship that says, hey, listen here, if you take our player, here's what you owe us back. And that's it kind of ties toward the Premier League soccer or the European soccer model. I think there's some thought there that could come to fruition. But again, everything that we seem to be doing has a legal overturn, and it's interesting to have different opinions. But just like you saw, last week with the House settlement, they came out and said the collectives can do X, and then the attorneys came back and said, no, that's clearly a business that was clearly covered in this settlement. So there's still confusion, and that confusion exists. It ends up being that typically the attorneys are the ones who are getting paid, so there's a great expense to try to get these answers mitigated, but then also it takes time. And so what rules you work on today may change tomorrow. And so it's part of what we have to navigate through. It's not easy solutions, and people can have conversations with their friends, or they can pontificate on social media. That's not the end all be all. That's what we can't go off of. We've got to basically make that operation work. But probably the last thing I would say is that in this national conversation, what I'm probably most confused by, or I think is the opportunity. I don't really understand the argument that we can't have student athletes as employees. I certainly think that those are in the the 1%, the 2%, the 5% that are making significant six figures, even seven figure licensing agreements with their schools to play. I don't know many college employees that are making some of the money that some of these kids are rumored to be making, and certainly, it's a real simple business thing for us. If I have a full-time employee, we pay their salary plus 35% as benefit. We have to budget for that. And if it's a student employee, it's roughly about 8% on top of the salary. So we can do the math in terms of figuring out what that cost would be. Certainly in the South, we don't have to deal with labor unions and some of the legal aspects of employment that others do. But from a standpoint of, okay, this would make sure that we kind of take some of the anonymity or some of the unknown out of some of the conversations. From a collective bargaining standpoint, it's coming at some point, and whether it's 3 years, 5 years, or next week, no one knows. But it just seems that the licensing rights, the compensation that the kids are getting, it's going to demand that the schools look at it from that standpoint, because it's the only rational way to go about it, and certainly one that I think is coming down the road. So I'll leave those last couple of things as thoughts for people that want to listen to this and walk through it, but certainly to understand that there is still a lot of unanswered questions around what we're trying to do.
All right, as always, appreciate it. We'll see you in Oxford, Mississippi in August for the opener, and then back here for Memphis for the season opener, and looking forward to having a great college football season here at Georgia State, and appreciate a lot of great insight to a lot of topics that are hovering over college athletics these days.
Yeah, no, Dave, I appreciate it. I think I'll probably see you before we get to Oxford, but appreciate what you do. Was this year 46? 43. My high school basketball number. How about that? I won't forget it. But appreciate what you do for us, and all I can say is I just implore people, hey, we're trying every day to make this thing work, and we need people to buy tickets. We need people to come to the games. We need people to give to our program and support our kids and our coaches, and that's what this new world order is about. So thank you.
All right, that's Georgia State's Director of Athletics, Charlie Cobb. Season tickets for Georgia State football available online right now at GeorgiaStateSports.com. Georgia State basketball season tickets available as well. That'll be here before you know it with head coach Jonas Hayes. But again, up next, Georgia State football here at Center Park Credit Union Stadium. I want to thank Charlie Cobb, Director of Athletics, for joining us on this latest Panther Insider podcast. We're back talking Georgia State athletics again soon on the Panther Insider podcast driven by Ford. This is Dave Cohen saying thanks for listening. We'll see you at Center Park Stadium, the GSU Convocation Center, or Panthersville. And as always, go Panthers!
GSU, GSU, GASCATE.